Dear friends, coming closer to God and serving Him is the whole reason for our existence. While many of us adults are struggling hard at this, there are innumerable examples of young people who have run the race and reached sainthood, leaving us behind. The Divine Roses would like to present the famous 33 young heroes of our Catholic faith who were great examples of heroic virtue and love of Christ, that the Church has canonized them or declared them as blessed. Let's have a quick look at the beautiful lives of these young heroes of our Catholic faith. First, Saint Teres of Lisieux. Therese is one of the most popular saints in the history of the Catholic Church. She overcame many obstacles to become a Carmelite nun at the age of 15. She is famous for her little way, where one does everything out of great love. Therese describes herself as the little flower that sits back and lets Jesus love her. Her approach is simple and practical. In 1997, St. John Paul II gave her the title of Doctor of the Church. She is the youngest doctor of the Church ever. Second, St. Joan of Arc. Joan, a peasant girl, received visions of St. Michael the Archangel, St. Margaret, and St. Catherine of Alexandria to rise up and help the French defeat the English in the 100 Years' War. After much convincing, her help led to an eventual French victory. She was captured and sentenced to death by a pro-English bishop. Third, Saint Agnes of Rome. Saint Agnes was a believer living in Rome at the end of the 3rd century. The governor's son wanted to marry her, but she felt called to a different life. When she refused to marry him, pledging herself to Christ and taking a vow of virginity, he demanded that she be dragged naked through the streets to a brothel. Tradition holds that as she was being dragged through the streets, her hair grew miraculously to cover her nakedness, and an angel prevented her tormentors from bringing her into the brothel. However, though she was spared the disgrace of the brothel, she was later beheaded. Though she was only a young girl when she faced death, her devotion to her faith is an example to all of us as we face adversity. Fourth, Saint Maria Goretti. Maria was an Italian virgin martyr of the Catholic Church and one of the youngest saints to be canonized. She was born to a farming family. Her father died when she was 9, and the family had to share a house with another family, the Serenellis. She took over household duties while her mother and siblings worked in the fields. One afternoon, Alessandro, the Serenelli's 20-year-old son, made sexual advances to her. When she refused to submit to him, he stabbed her 14 times. She was taken to the hospital, but she died forgiving him. He was arrested, convicted, and jailed. During imprisonment, he repented. Maria was beatified in 1947 and canonized in 1950. Fifth, Jinta Marto. Between May 13 and October 13 of the year 1917, Jacinta, Francisco, and Lucia were granted the great privilege of seeing the Virgin in Fatima. After that, Jacinta lived passionately for the conversion of sinners. The vision of hell had impressed her very much, and she did all she could to prevent sinners from going there. One time she exclaimed, "I grieve for sinners. If I could show them hell." The glory of God, salvation of souls, the importance of the Holy Father and priest, the necessity and love for the sacraments, All this took first priority in her life. She lived the Fatima messages for the salvation of souls around the world, demonstrating a great missionary spirit. Sixth, Francisco Marto. Unlike his sister Jacinta and cousin sister Lucia, Francisco was the most contemplative and perhaps the one to distinguish himself more for his love and reparation in the Eucharist. After receiving Holy Communion from the angel, he said, "I knew God was in me, but did not know how he was." In his life, he had real devotion to the angels, saints, and the Virgin Mary. He was amazed by the beauty and gentleness of the angel and the Mother of God, and they led him to encounter Jesus. Francisco wanted above all else to console God, who was greatly offended by the sins of humanity. He desired only to think of the ways to console our Lord and the Virgin Mary, who he had seen so sad. At Fatima on May 13, 2000, the 83rd anniversary of the first apparition, the Pope declared Francisco and Jacinta as blessed. Seventh, Saint J Sanchez Del Rio. Saint Joseph was captured in Mexico during the Cristero War. The government tried to suppress the Catholic Church and mandate secularization. He was tortured and killed, but he refused to betray Christ. He was canonized as a saint by Pope Francis on October 16, 2016. 8th, Saint Kateri Tekakwitha. Kateri was an Algonquin Mohawk Native American who converted to Catholicism at the age of 19. Her tribe shunned her, but she was relentless in her love for Jesus for the rest of her life. She was canonized by Pope Benedict XVI in 2012. 9th, Saint Dymphna. According to traditional narratives, Dymphna was the daughter of a petty king in Ireland in the 7th century. After the death of her mother, Dymphna's father became mentally ill and desired to marry her. She fled to Belgium, but her father found and beheaded her. She was canonized in the year 620. 10th, Saint Philomena. Saint Philomena was a young Christian girl living in Greece in the 3rd century. She was persecuted for her faith and tortured before finally being murdered for her refusal to deny her Christian faith. Saint Philomena is considered as a symbol of courage and perseverance in the faith and is celebrated as a saint by the Catholic Church. 11th, Saint Perpetua. Saint Perpetua was a Christian martyr of the 3rd century. She was a well-educated noblewoman said to have been 22 years old at the time of her death and mother of an infant son she was nursing. She was put to death along with others at Carthage in the Roman province of Africa. The day before her martyrdom, Perpetua envisions herself defeating a savage Egyptian and interprets this to mean that she would have to do battle not merely with wild beasts but with the devil himself. 12th, Saint Dominic Savio. Born and raised in Italy, Dominic showed signs of sanctity early on. When he was just 4 years old, Dominic was frequently found by his parents in solitary prayer. He learned to be an altar boy at age 5. He was an Italian student of John Bosco. He was studying to be a priest when he became ill and died at the age of 14, possibly from pleurisy. After he died, John Bosco wrote a biography of Dominic, which was instrumental in Dominic being canonized. Dominic was noted for his piety and devotion to the Catholic faith and was canonized a saint by Pope Pius XII in 1954. He was the youngest person ever to have been canonized a saint by the Catholic Church without being some sort of martyr. 13th, Saint Aloysius Gonzaga. Aloysius was born right into the life of the aristocracy. He was next in line to inherit his father's title as Marquis of Castiglione. After reading about Jesuit missionaries in India, he decided he wanted to join the Jesuits against his father's wishes. At the age of 17, he renounced all of his noble roots to serve God. While still a student at the Roman college, he died as a result of caring for the victims of a serious epidemic. He was beatified in 1605 and canonized in 1726. 14th, Saint Germain, cousin. Germain was born with a deformed hand and a form of tuberculosis called scrofula. To protect other children, a father had to live her life as a shepherdess, sleeping each night in a stable. The villagers and her own stepmother treated her with cruelty. Despite her hardships, she lived each day full of thanksgiving and joy and spent much of her time praying the rosary and teaching the village children about the love of God. She was barely fed and had an emaciated figure. Yet, despite of this, she shared the little bread that she had with the poor of the village. From her simple faith grew a deep holiness and profound trust in God. She went to Mass every day, leaving her sheep in the care of a guardian angel who never failed her. God protected Germain and showered his favor upon her. God called her to himself when she was in the 22nd year of her life. She was canonized on 29 June 1867 by Pope Pius IX. 15th, Saint Pedro Calungsod, also known as Peter Calungsod or Pedro Calungsod, is a Roman Catholic young Filipino saint and was a migrant, sacristan, and missionary catechist who, along with the Spanish Jesuit missionary Diego Luis de San Vittorish, suffered religious persecution and martyrdom in Guam for their missionary work in 1672. Pope Benedict XVI canonized him in 2012. 16th, Saint Catherine of Alexandria. Born of noble birth, Saint Catherine was already a notable scholar in the sciences and Christianity by the age of 18. The Emperor Maximinus brought out his top men to debate her, but they could not defeat her. Some of them even converted to Christianity and were instantly martyred. Saint Catherine was imprisoned. The emperor made a final attempt to persuade the beautiful Catherine to abandon her faith by proposing marriage to her. But when Catherine refused by saying that she was married to Jesus Christ and that her virginity was dedicated to him, the emperor angrily ordered her to be executed on a breaking will. 17th, Saint Lucy. Born in Sicily, Saint Lucy converted to Christianity after a blind mother recovered her eyesight. She was martyred at a young age under the persecution of the Emperor Diocletian. The exact reason is uncertain, but tradition holds that a spurned suitor reported her to the governor, who had her killed for her faith. Another tradition holds that, as part of her torture, she was blinded, but her eyesight was miraculously restored. For this reason, she is the patron saint for eyesight. 18th, Saint Elizabeth of Hungary. Elizabeth was married at the age of 14 and widowed at 20. After her husband's death, she regained her dowry, using the money to build a hospital where she herself served the sick. She became a symbol of Christian charity after her death in 1231 at the age of 24 and was canonized on 25th May 1235. She is venerated as a saint by the Catholic Church. She was an early member of the Third Order of Saint Francis and is today honored as its patroness. 19th, Saint Cleia Barbieri. Clelia was an Italian Roman Catholic and the founder of the Little Sisters of the Mother of Sorrows. She is regarded as the youngest founder of a religious congregation in the history of the Catholic Church, as she was just 23 when she died. Barbieri declined the married life in her adolescence, even when pressured, in favor of leading a life dedicated to the needs of others. She served as an educator for a while and joined a religious movement which made her a notable figure in her village. She was canonized on 9th April 1989 by Pope John Paul II. 20th. Saint Agata of Sicily. Agata was born in Catania, part of the Roman province of Sicily, and was martyred in 251 AD. She is one of several virgin martyrs who are commemorated by name in the canon of the Mass. Agata was a woman of rare beauty. She came from a noble and illustrious family and dedicated her life to religion. Governor Quintiamus wanted to possess her, but she refused, desirous of maintaining her chastity. Due to resistance of Agata to the governor's sexual advances, he ordered that her breast be torn off with iron shears, and this became the martyrdom of Saint Agata. She was sent to a dungeon to die, and sometime later the Lord sent an angel to restore and heal her breast. Quintiamus was filled with rage and furiously directed that Agata be burned alive. Because of her martyrdom, she became the patron saint of diseases of the breast for the Catholic Church. 21st. Saint Teresa of the Andes. Inspired by the biography of Saint Teres of Lisieux and the Call of God, Teresa became a descalced Carmelite nun in Chile. Despite knowing she would die young from typhus, she was consoled knowing that she would be able to make a profession before she died, and she lived a life with a complete love for God. She was canonized on 21st March 1993 by Pope John Paul II. 22nd. St. John Birchmans. John Birchmans was a Jesuit scholastic and is revered as a saint in the Catholic Church. He had a deep love for being an altar server at Mass. In 1615, the Jesuits opened a college at Mechelen, Belgium, and Birchmans was one of the first to enroll despite the strong opposition from his father. His spiritual model was his fellow Jesuit Aloysius Gonzaga, and he was influenced by the example of the English Jesuit martyrs. Birchmans is the patron saint of altar servers, Jesuit scholastics, and students. 23rd. Saint Stanislaus Kostka. Stanislaus sought to join the Society of Jesus despite the physical abuses of his older brother. His Jesuit teacher said that he was a model and mirror of religious perfection. Wrapped up in prayer, he died from an unknown illness made worse by a high fever. He was canonized on 31st December 1726 by Pope Benedict XIII. 24th. Saint Gabriel of Our Lady of Sorrows. Gabriel was an Italian Passionist clerical student. Born to a professional family, he gave up ambitions of a secular career to enter the Passionist congregation. His life in the monastery was not extraordinary, yet he followed the rule of the congregation perfectly and was known for his great devotion to the sorrows of the Virgin Mary. He died from tuberculosis at the age of 23. He was canonized by Pope Benedict XV in 1920. 25th. Saint Nunzio Suprio. Nunzio lost his parents when he was very young. In the midst of these tragedies, Nunzio was sent to live with his grandmother, but she also died when he was only 8 years old. Even as a boy, he took the time to attend Mass, coming to know God and learning to follow the example of Jesus and the saints. He led a very miserable life after the death of his grandmother when he was sent to live with his cruel and abusive uncle. This uncle didn't allow Nunzio to go to school and instead took him on as an apprentice blacksmith. He was often beaten and not given proper nourishment. On one of his supply runs for his uncle, he caught gangrene in one of his legs. He went through excruciating pain for about 5 years, but he suffered silently and joyfully, all for the glory of God, for the sake of love of Jesus, and for the conversion of sinners. He was canonized on 14th October 2018 by Pope Francis. 26th, Blessed Carlo Acutis. Carlo Acutis was an English-born Italian Catholic youth and website designer who is best known for documenting Eucharistic miracles and the approved Marian apparitions around the world and cataloging them into a website which he created before his death from leukemia. He was noted for his cheerfulness, computer skills, and deep devotion to the Eucharist, which became a core theme of his life. He was beatified by the Catholic Church on 10th October 2020. 27th, Blessed Laura Vicuna. Laura was born in Santiago, Chile in 1891. Laura's father died suddenly when she was still just a small child. Mrs. Vicuna, with her 2 daughters, sought refuge in Argentina. In search of a way to finance her daughter's education, Mrs. Vicuna took a job in an hostel, and she became a mistress to the owner of that hostel. When Laura realized that her mother was living in a sinful situation, she offered her life to God for her mother's conversion. In 1900, the Salesian sisters welcomed Laura Vicuna into their college in Junín de los Andes. Laura grew in virtue and, with the consent of her confessor, privately vowed to live the 3 vows professed by the religious sisters, that is, poverty, chastity, and obedience. Worn out with sacrifice and ill health, she died at the age of 12 and was beatified by Pope John Paul II on 3rd September 1988. 28. Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati. Pier Giorgio was an Italian Catholic activist and a member of the Third Order of St. Dominic. He was dedicated to social justice issues and joined several charitable organizations, including Catholic Action and the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, to better aid the poor and less fortunate living in his hometown of Turin. He put his own pious beliefs into practice to cater to their needs and was best known for his devotion and amiable character. He was a very talented young man. He was an avid mountaineer and a good athlete who could swim well. He could even recite Dante passages with relative ease. He could even speak German as well as French. Frassati died on 4th July 1925 due to polio. He was beatified by Pope John Paul II on 20 May 1990. 29th, Blessed Kiara Badano. Kiara was a young Italian teenager who has been beatified by the Roman Catholic Church. At age 9, she joined the Focolare movement and received the nickname Luce, which means light, by the founder Chiara Lubitsch. She loved singing, dancing, hiking, and sports, and was also deeply faithful. When she was 16, she was diagnosed with osteogenic sarcoma, a painful bone cancer. In response, Kiara simply declared, "It's for you, Jesus. If you want it, I want it too." Kiara's faith and spirit never dwindled, and she suffered everything patiently and joyfully for the love of Jesus. Kiara died from the cancer on October 7, 1990, after a 2-year battle with the disease. She was beatified on September 25, 2010. 30th, Blessed Isidor Bakanja. Bakanja accepted the Christian faith at 18 years of age through the ministry of Cistercian missionaries in the Belgian Congo. He was a very devout convert and catechist. Bakanja had a great love for the Blessed Virgin Mary that he expressed through recitation of the Rosary and by being invested in the brown scapular of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. His Belgian colonist employers had ordered him to cease sharing the gospel as well as to remove the scapular that he wore as a witness to his faith. Isidor's refusal to comply with the demands of his supervisor resulted in his being brutally beaten and chained. He suffered agonizing pain from his wounds for 6 months. Bakanja's wounds became severely infected, so much so that his condition had deteriorated so severely, however, that no further medical attention could help him. But Isidor Bakanja forgave his employer and said, "Certainly I shall pray for him. When I am in heaven, I shall pray for him very much." He was beatified by Pope John Paul II on 24th of April 1994. 31st, Blessed Imelda Lambertini. Imelda was born in Bologna, the only child of her parents. Her parents were devout Catholics and were known for their charity and generosity to the underprivileged of Bologna. On her 5th birthday, Imelda requested to receive the Eucharist. However, the custom at the time was that children did not receive their first communion until age 14. At age 9, she went to live with the Dominican nuns at Val di Pietra near Bologna. On May 12, 1333, the day of the Vigil of the Ascension, she knelt in prayer, and the light of the host was reportedly witnessed above her head by the sacristan, who then fetched the priest so he could see. After seeing this miracle, the priest felt compelled to admit her to receiving the Eucharist. Immediately after receiving, Imelda went back to her seat and decided to stay after Mass and pray. Later, when a nun came to get her for supper, she found her still kneeling with a smile on her face. The nun called her name, but she did not stir, so she lightly tapped Imelda on the shoulder, at which Imelda collapsed to the floor dead. Imelda was beatified on 20 December 1826 by Pope Leo XII. She is considered as the patroness of first communicants. 32nd, Blessed Carolina Kostka. Carolina was a 16-year-old Polish victim of a sex attack and murder. Prior to that, she was known locally for her strong faith and her eagerness to catechize her neighbors and children. Carolina is often referred to as the Polish Maria Goretti due to the manner of her death. Carolina's death caused great public outrage against Russians, since a Russian soldier was believed to have attacked and killed her. 3,000 people flocked to her funeral and called for her canonization cause to be introduced, as she died defending her virginity. She was beatified by Pope John Paul II on 10th of June 1987. 33rd, Servant of God Akash Bashir. Akash was a Pakistani layman and a former student of the Don Bosco Technical Institute in Lahore, Pakistan. In December 2014, he joined the security team in charge of protecting the Church of St. John in Lahore in the predominantly Christian neighborhood of Johanabad. On Sunday, 15th of March 2015, he blocked a suicide bomber who was about to enter the church. The bomber detonated his bomb outside the church, killing both of them. In January 2022, he was named a servant of God by Pope Francis, and the cause for his beatification was opened.